I'm extremely excited to bring on this topic. Connected diseases, neurological disorders, and NCDs, non-communicable diseases. And I've met several people here today who just said, okay, we have been wondering a bit, you know, about this connection. So will really be exciting. And I am a very lucky person because I have the opportunity to travel sometimes and meet amazing people. And I have met Yvan at a meeting in Brussels some months ago. And I was thinking, wow, this is really a connection between, you know, research areas that is so exciting.
Awesome.
And of course, I wanted him to come here, and here he is. So please share with us your research about this connection. And well, you are the head of the research unit for cardiovascular health, but you have all the other things around it too. So please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Penilla. Thank you, Matthias, also for the organization of this very stimulating event and for the invitation to talk this afternoon. Thank you for the introduction. Yes, my name is Yvan Devaux. I'm originally French. I'm still French. And I work in Luxembourg. And in Luxembourg, what we are interested, as Penilla already introduced a bit, is to study the interactions between the brain and the heart, because we believe that the human body is not a single organ and everything is connected, and it's important that we, in our research, we take into account these interconnections. But before entering into the core of the science that we are doing, I would like to give a few words about networking activities. We believe that networking activities are very important, and we have really the tendency, and not only a tendency, we really want to bring together people with different expertise, different stakeholders, because we believe that it is important. And one of the main stakeholders in our research activities are patients, of course. They are at the center of all our projects. And these patients, they are also included in what we call the cost actions. So costs, for those who are not familiar with, it's a European cooperation in science and technology. It's an association that is based in Brussels, that is funded by the Horizon Europe program from the European Commission. And then the funding is given to researchers who would like to develop some networking activities, not purely funding for research, is funding to organize some meetings like this one, for example, to put together people with different views of the disease. And the patients are very, very much involved in there. And I had the chance of chairing and co-chairing also 3 of these cost action networks, EU CardioRNA, Atironate, and now Cardiopharmagenetics, which are mostly focused on trying to understand better how can we implement precision medicine in cardiovascular disease and also in brain diseases. Initially, indeed, I'm a cardiovascular person, but a few years ago, I decided to develop a so-called brain-heart axis in the research activities of my team, because I believe that the brain and the heart have lot of interactions, as you can see in this scheme, which, by the way, has been drawn by one of my former PhD students. Her name is at the bottom. And she was not only a good researcher, a good PhD student, but she was also very talented. And as you can see here, she drawn these schemes by hand. And then that really represents the, don't have a laser, but the interactions between these 2 very important organs that are the brain and the heart. So to enter into the topic of these interactions, I would like to take 2 examples. The first one is myocardial infarction as one of the most unfortunately frequent and important cardiac disease. And the second example, I'm going to talk about Parkinson's disease, which of course is also a main problem. Myocardial infarction, also known as heart attack, is induced by a plug in an artery that is provides the blood to the cardiac muscle. And when there is a plug in this artery, then the muscle is degenerating, and the heart is not able to do its function to pump the blood into the peripheral organs anymore. And this is a big issue, as I'm sure you know. We are currently working on a grant applications on designing a research project which will be submitted in a month to the European Commission for funding. And this research project is very much about sex differences and gender differences. We initially, in the past, had the tendency to consider that a woman is equal to a man, but not in terms of the risk of having a myocardial infarction or the risk of developing problems after myocardial infarction. We know that women, they traditionally have a lower risk of developing a heart attack, but the problem is when the heart attack occurs, then the women, they have a higher risk of developing problems. And we don't really know why. And we don't take that into account in clinical practice. So it's for that reason that we are mounting and building this large scale. It involves 15 partners from, I guess, 9 countries to try to better understand why women and men do not share the same risk of having myocardial infarction. And as you can see in this kind of complex, or you can see or you cannot see because it might be too small, but this is a kind of representation of the research project that we are building. And it shows, or it could show, that it involves many stakeholders, including industrials, patient organizations, and all these people that are important, the end users, as we used to call them. Okay, because we believe that patients have to be at the center of every research project. They have to be not only at the end as the end user, but they have to come since the beginning, since the design of the project, so that we make sure that what we want to develop will be finally used by the end user, by the clinicians, and by the patients. And in my lab, we have an expertise, as in any research lab, and it's about RNA molecules. You know, these molecules that are used for the vaccine against COVID. And we believe that these RNA molecules, they have the capacity to be used to develop new treatments for heart attack. And this project is mostly on these molecular aspects. I'm a molecular biologist. And this is also based on previous finding where we have found that a RNA molecule that we could detect in the blood as a non-invasive marker of the severity of myocardial infarction. And this RNA is a kind of, it's a circular RNA like a loop, and that we can measure in the blood, and that indicate whether the patient will have a high risk or a low risk of developing problems after the heart attack. And then this would allow to move towards personalized or precision medicine. And of course, the problems that arrive after a heart attack, mostly they are under the name of heart failure, when the heart is dysfunctioning and is not able to do his job anymore. So that's the first example of research that we are doing. The second one is about Parkinson. Yesterday night, for example, we discussed during the networking dinner a lot about Parkinson, and I believe that this is a very important problem. And there are some unmet needs, some areas where research really needs to be supported in Parkinson's disease. And in this project, we most particularly focus on trying to develop some early markers of the disease. The disease, Parkinson's disease, is diagnosed when symptoms occur, but which means that the disease has started 15 years before. And then the problem is that when it's diagnosed, it's too late, because the brain is already too much damaged. And if we are able to advance the diagnosis, then we would be able to kind of prevent, not prevent, but at least to stop the progression of the disease, or to ameliorate the condition of life of these patients. This project is collaborative projects. All our projects are with different many collaborators, and this one is with 3 research groups in France, where we have established this partnership. And what we want to do is here on the left to develop an RNA molecule that we would encapsulate, put into nanoparticles. And then the nanoparticles would be injected to the patients, and hopefully we would hope that these nanoparticles, they would reach the brain, reach the dopaminergic neurons, and manage to increase the production of dopamine, to restore the production of dopamine by the failing dopaminergic neurons that are characteristic of Parkinson's disease. And just to give you an example that what we are doing is feasible. We can use RNA molecules to treat patients. This is a paper in Science that has been published last week, very fresh paper. And these investigators, they have shown that by using a nanoparticle which contains an RNA molecule which encodes, which triggers the production of a protein which is atrial natriuretic peptide, which is cardioprotective, can, but it is in this slide, once it is injected with a single dose intramuscularly, then it can have protective effects on the brain. Here it's on the heart. So, which means that the RNA molecule can have the capacity to be used as novel treatments for heart and brain diseases. So it's exactly what we are trying to push in our research lab. Why are we so much interested in the interactions between the brain and the heart? In Luxembourg, it's a very small country, we didn't even see it on the map that Penilla showed this morning, the map that are even in the opposite direction. Luxembourg, you cannot see it, it's just a dot on the map. But we are there. There is 500,000 people there, but still we are active. And what we have seen is in our national cohort of Parkinson's disease, we have the fact that the country is so small is that we managed to have a kind of study, a center of excellence on Parkinson, where all the patients with Parkinsonian disorders, not only Parkinson's disease, but all the Parkinsonian disorders are included in this study. And what we have observed is that in these patients, we have more or less 2,000 patients diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. We have seen that there is a higher risk of developing cardiovascular problems in patients who have Parkinson's disease. And this is, for us, this was a 2-fold higher risk. It's not nothing. It's very important. So we should not only consider patients with Parkinson's disease because the patient has a problem in the brain, but also because this problem can trigger problems in other organs which are very important, like the heart. And it's exactly what is represented here, where the patients, they have a 2-fold risk of developing cardiovascular problems when they are diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. So we are very much interested to look at the crosstalk between the brain and the heart, mostly involving these RNA molecules that can be released from an organ to another one, and that can have what we call paracrine effects, long-distance effect in other organs. So these are my take-home messages. We understand that the human body is complex, is dynamic. We understand also that non-communicable diseases, including the disease of the brain and of the heart, are multifactorial. They involve different processes, and we should take them, all of them, into account in a kind of integrated, holistic view of the problem. And it's for that reason that we need to develop some multimodal approaches which involve, is a kind of strange word here, multi-omic technologies, but it's technologies which are looking at the proteins, the DNA, the RNA, the metabolites that we have in our body that all interact together. If we want to have a capacity to apply personalized healthcare in these patients. And we are most interested in biomarkers, so some molecules that we can detect in the blood that can tell you at an early stage whether this patient has or will develop Parkinson's disease. And as I showed you also an example with this science paper, is that the research is going on. we are making a lot of progress, and the recent developments, such as the lipid nanoparticles that are able to carry the RNA molecules and that are able to bring these molecules to the site of action, for example, in the brain and in the heart. And there is really here a promise in terms of therapeutic approach. So my final message is I think we are going in a good direction. I think we should involve the patients and their associations in all the research projects that we are developing, as well as industrials, policymakers, advocacy people, and so on. Thank you so much for your attention.
So now we listen to research about the connection between the brain and the heart. I think, as you mentioned now, of course, patient organizations should be involved. But how about the professions? I mean, the professionals in cardiology, neurology, and so on. How can they collaborate? And are they interested in this crossover, research?
I hope that they are interested, and if they are not interested, it's our job to raise their interest, because we sincerely believe that it is important to look at the human body as a human body and not as an isolated organ. And then the clinicians, of course, a cardiologist would be interested in cardiology, a neurologist will take care of the brain. But no, this is past. And that's the future, is that these people, they work together, and then they realize that we cannot treat an organ in isolation. We should really take care and study the effects of the drugs on other organs because of side effects and all these things, which are because of disabilities. And yes, there is a little bit to do there to convince these people, but we are working on it. And for the clinicians that are interested in research, I think that's not an issue at all. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Yvan, and we will discuss it more later on. But now I will welcome Åsa Konradsson Geuken to the stage. And as you might know, some of you who were here last year, the Schizophrenic Patient Organization also was awarded being the Patient Advocate of the Year. So a warm hand for Åsa.
Thank you very much. And let's see if I have the, sorry.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say that we will now have another, perspective of this topic coming from both research and patient, I think.
Yes.
Please.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Penilla, and also FOKUS patient and Matthias for inviting me to give this talk. So my name is Åsa Konradsson Geuken, and I'm a person with very many hats. So I am an associate professor in pharmacology at Uppsala University, and I do research on schizophrenia and trying to target new medication for schizophrenia, and you will understand why. I'm also a person that is in different boards, both nationally and internationally. But here today, I'm representing the Swedish Schizophrenia Association, which is a patient organization consisting of 3,000 members and 30 local associations. And we are the voice for the people that don't have the capacity to raise their voice. And I'm also the president of Yvan, which is an international, a European organization, a family organization with 20 or 40 organizations within 26 countries. And we reach 25 million people. And my talk today is about difficulties for individuals with psychiatric diagnosis in accessing care for other medical conditions. And if we go back 38 years ago, I was 14 years old, and my brother got diagnosed with schizophrenia. And that was a total disaster in my life. And that is the reason for all my work on schizophrenia. And I'm the younger sister that have turned the family's biggest sorrow into a driving force. When I talk for my students at Uppsala University about schizophrenia and I ask them, can you please spell schizophrenia? Hardly no one can spell schizophrenia. And even though they have been going through lectures with me, and they probably understand that there will be a question where they have to put the word schizophrenia from a patient, what do you call it, patient fall, like a patient, or a question about the patient. Last time when I had this question for my students, I got 15 different spelling suggestions on schizophrenia. And it would be the same thing if I would ask people on the street, can you please spell schizophrenia? Hardly no one can. There's usually an T in the word. And if I go even further, if I would ask people to explain what schizophrenia is, people have these terrible visions of schizophrenia. They're dangerous, there are no cure, etc., etc. So that's why I'm starting with this slide. Schizophrenia is a severe mental illness where the individual has a distorted perception of reality. And according to the WHO, schizophrenia is one of the 10 diseases causing the most burden of illness. And it's a common illness with an unknown etiology and pathophysiology. The lifetime prevalence over the whole globe is 0.4 to 1%. If you get diagnosed with schizophrenia, you have a shorter life expectancy of approximately 15 to 20 years. When I ask my students, what do you think people with schizophrenia die from? They always say suicide. But that is not the case. People with schizophrenia, they die from exactly the same disorders as everyone else. They die from cancer and cardiovascular disorders, but 15 to 20 years earlier. That say quite much how hard and tough this disease is for the human body, but that is not the only cause. It's also dependent on the pharmacology we give to these patients. Schizophrenia affects men and women in different times in life. Men develop the first psychosis between 20 to 25, while women develop their first psychosis between 25 and 30 years old. The symptoms are divided into 3 clusters. The positive symptoms that are the same as psychosis. And it's not called positive because they're fun. They are called that way because they arrived, they popped up when you got the diagnosis. And you see the word hallucinations. That is a huge cluster of symptoms and affects all the senses. So smell, sight, vision, and also sense of on your skin. So if I would have a psychosis right now, I would see that you're seeing it comes gas from the ceiling, and I can also feel that the gas is coming from the ceiling. And when I met Anders here, he gave me a candy. When I put it in my mouth, I can feel that it tastes toxic. Is he trying to kill me? So the hallucinations are extremely tough for people with schizophrenia. The delusions are something else. It means that you can be paranoid, and that you feel that you're controlled from outer space, from the radio, from the TV, or something else. But it can also be that you cannot understand if things that you see on the TV, that you see on the news, that information is towards yourself. These people are extremely scared of reality, of their own reality. The negative symptoms are something totally different. That is behaviors that used to be existing but is withdrawn when the person gets the diagnosed schizophrenia. And you see the word anhedonia. Anhedonia is usually explained as you lack the ability to feel happiness. But that is not enough when it comes to schizophrenia. Yes, you will perhaps lack the ability to feel happiness, but also lack the ability to feel sadness and also love. What kind of life is it to suffer from positive symptoms and also lack the ability to feel happiness, sadness, and love? Something that we that are considered ourselves as healthy take for granted. In the negative symptoms, we also have a lack of expressive language and lack of motivation. And the cognitive deficits are a huge cluster. So challenges in receiving and interpret information and also give the information to someone else. Learning difficulties, severe memory problems, and issues with abstract thinking. So when you talk about schizophrenia, people most think about psychosis, but this is a huge disorder and very much in between the symptoms. So there are currently no medication that cure schizophrenia. And the medication is needed for these people to continue being human beings. The antipsychotic medications can reduce and stabilize key symptoms, and that is particularly the positive symptoms, such as hallucinations and delusions. And to continue the antipsychotic treatment is essential for recovery, as it significantly reduces the risk of relapse in psychosis, permanent disabilities, and psychiatric hospitalizations. If you look at long-acting injectable antipsychotics, we see that they further improve treatment continuity and reduce the risk of relapse and rehospitalization with up to 30%. And long-term antipsychotic treatment is also associated with substantially lower premature mortality, with studies suggesting around 50% reduction in the risk of early death. So antipsychotic medication is life-sustainable when it comes to schizophrenia. We have side effects of antipsychotic drugs, and they cause metabolic side effects, severe weight gain, insulin resistance, and problems with dyslipidemia, and the risk of increase of obesity, cardiovascular disease, and type 2 diabetes. Some antipsychotic drugs may cause movement disorders, including extrapyramidal side effects and tardive dyskinesia. Other side effects cause sedation, hormonal disturbances, and that is mostly on prolactin, and sexual dysfunction. And 2022, in the fall, 3 different scientific papers came out independently saying that elevated prolactin levels show an increased risk for women with schizophrenia to develop breast cancer in women. When this came out, I wrote a debate article to try to reach psychiatrists in Sweden. We cannot continue giving women with schizophrenia prolactin-inducing medication to put them to higher risk for developing breast cancer. Nothing happened. So I reached out to the popular science world instead and wrote an even tougher debate article that actually got people's attention. And now when the national guidelines are supposed to be written in Sweden or updated, this is something that we really keep in mind. The risks that I have pinpointed here highlight the importance of regular somatic monitoring and integrated psychiatry and physical healthcare, just as you were pinpointing just before I got up on the stage. Something else So, as I said, people with schizophrenia have 15 to 20 years shorter life expectancy than the general population. Most of these people die from somatic disorders, as I said, like cardiovascular disorders and cancer, and not from the disorder that they actually suffer from the beginning. And at the same time, individuals with schizophrenia often receive poorer access to both somatic and psychiatric healthcare. So somatic illness is therefore often underdiagnosed and undertreated in this population. And this is particularly concerning as essential antipsychotic medication can increase the risk of metabolic and cardiovascular diseases. So for example, patients with type 2 diabetes may have limited access to treatments as for example, the GLP-1 analogs, despite clear indications. So even if you have diabetes type 2 in Sweden and you suffer from schizophrenia, you don't get access to that medication. That is a huge problem, of course. But to finish off with some a good thing, because I really enjoyed being invited to give this talk, and thank you for your attention. But here's a citation from a person with schizophrenia. That is, and this person is saying, "Life didn't turn out quite as I planned, but I'm living a good life, and that's what we need to aim for." Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Åsa. And I think it's really good information and knowledge to us all who is not involved in this topic every day. So thank you so much. But I just we will come back to that in the panel discussion with the esteemed panel that we have here. But I mean, if you do have a psychiatric diagnosis like schizophrenia, and you are not able to express, how you feel, and how maybe if you have pain, or to really express yourself, isn't it a very good chance that you come? We always talk about the importance of early detection, but here it seems to come very late then.
Yes. And it's not just in somatic disorders. That is also for schizophrenia, also for the main disorder. So the memory problems that a lot of these patients suffer from is episodic memory, which is that you can in words tell what you have been experiencing, and as we don't have any biomarkers, the diagnosis is based on a discussion and manuals. And if you cannot express how you feel, how you're not feeling, what you need kind of help, you will learn that quite quickly as a patient. So you will, when you get the question, "How are you today?" even if you feel very bad, you will say, "I'm okay." If you ask psychiatrists who are the happiest, most happiest patients, they say people with schizophrenia. But that is the lack of knowledge. They cannot express themselves. And that comes for the same thing when it comes to the somatic problems. And people with schizophrenia if you lack also motivation, that you should scan your breasts for breast cancer, for example, or for tumors. But if you don't have the ability to even go grocery shopping or go visit your family, how are you supposed to find the energy to go to do breast scanning? That's why it's so important. We cannot cannot give these women medication that increases the risk for breast cancer.
You were also mentioning diabetes. The treatment that everybody else could gain from, and this group cannot.
And that is also the so the medication is causing diabetes type 2, and they need the medication for the schizophrenia, but they don't get access for the medication, and if they do, they have to pay it themselves, and it's like 400 euros per month, and this is a group of people that don't have that kind of economy.
No, of course. I mean, if they cannot work, it's natural to not have the money, of course. But also, I mean, a final question: if it's also, I mean, it increased the risk for obesity, and I think that's quite common, if I'm not wrong, with many psychiatric diagnoses as well. And then you have the increased risk, of course, of cardiovascular disease. So I mean, there's a lot of things.
It's a lot of things, and one part is the medication, but it's also the disorder itself, because you get lack of motivation, and that together with the medication is increasing the risk for severe obesity, diabetes type 2, and also cardiovascular disorder. But it's one effect is the disorder, and one is actually the effect we see from antipsychotic drugs.
Thank you so much, Åsa. And now I will call for the panel. So Anders, Eduardo, Thomas, Marit, please. I should step on the other side. So we have two national representatives, Anders Åkesson, who is the president of the Swedish Heart and Lung.
Heart and Lung Association.
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine. It's great.
There's so many, organs here.
It's great. It's just great.
Marit Jenset, who is the Secretary General of the Breast Cancer Association. And Thomas Magnusson, well, he's also national. I was thinking you were international, but now I have to bring you back to Sweden. Thomas Magnusson is the president of Diabetes Sweden. And then we have the international guest, Eduardo Pisani, who is the CEO of All.Can International. So very welcome to this panel. And I think if I start with Anders, you've heard two different perspectives of this. I mean, to me, very interesting topic about how brain and heart works together, and also when you meet a very vulnerable group of patients that also can be affected also by cardiovascular diseases and many other things, I would say. Yeah. What do you think about it?
It was not quite. I was aware of that, and especially of the question of schizophrenia, because I wrote also a debate article with your vice president, Lennart, a couple of years ago, about how the primary care doesn't reflect or I would say neglect the persons with schizophrenia, and also the specialist care of psychiatric ward. They don't have the understanding of what taking the blood pressure, giving the medicines for ordinary heart and lung diseases and so on. So that is a problem, and that is also related to the mortality that you mentioned here also. So I think that is a question that also the primary care needs to reflect on, and also we have to have systems that also gives the primary care the possibility to take on the patients, and also together with the psychiatric care. So they need to have a relationship, and of course also the superb from you, Yvan, of how the system works with the brain and the heart and lung. And I think that also reflects on how the persons also do their exercise and training and so on, because that also gives the possibility.
The preventive part.
There is they also need to take care of yourself, but that also reflects on the brain and also how the body works, I would say.
Thank you so much. If I turn to Thomas, we heard about this vulnerable group from Åkesson and the effect of not having the proper medication, of course, but also the effects of diabetes and so on, and the connection then with brain disorders and diabetes. What do you think about that? Is that something that you work with in your organization?
Well, I would start to say that when we in our organization is talking about raising the knowledge about diabetes, we are also talking about the different consequences you can have with diabetes, because many of our members do not have the real knowledge about what happened when I have diabetes type 2, for example. They didn't have the time when they was at the nurse to understand what's happening with my body. This is one of the great missions for us in our organization, to help them to get more educated and more information how to do and what to treat my situation. But I also would like to say that the conference is talking about the future later. What is the future? The future is that we are treating different diseases as I have. I'm a one person, but I have different diseases. We are not there today. Not our members do not recognize that they are treating different diseases at the same time. In my case, I have 3 doctors. One for diabetes, one for cardiovascular heart, and one at the central healthcare center. And these 3 are very good, but they are not working together. They may be speaking together with you sometime. They may be reading what the other did, but where is the team? This is the future. I was still missing the team that we have to work together, because they are talking about me. They're not talking about someone else. They are talking about one person, and then they need to treat this one person.
The holistic view of the person.
Exactly.
We will come back to that. But Marit, you were listening also to these presentations, and if we relate also to cancer, breast cancer especially, then also to see that of course women are more or less obliged to do the screening, but if they are not able to, they cannot really realize how important it is, and so on. How do you work with that in your organization? I mean, I know you work for equality and so on, of course, the reduce inequalities, but now when you have listened to all these connections, how do you feel about that?
Well, I feel this session and also the sessions earlier today really gives good insights. I mean, every hour a woman is diagnosed with breast cancer in Sweden. So it's a lot of women. It's over 9,000 a year. And of course, a lot of these women have other diseases when they get their breast cancer diagnosis. It's not that they are all healthy and then they got cancer. And I think it's has a lot of layers. It's not only the screening. I mean, we have the whole prevention issue that we talked about this morning. As I think is that we should work a lot more together, because it's so similar. If you got heart disease or neurological or a stroke or cancer, it's the prevention issue is very similar, so that I think we should join forces and work much more together. And we have a great screening program in Sweden. I mean, it's probably one of the best in the world for breast cancer. And we see that, unfortunately, the one that are missing out from their breast cancer screening is women with lower socio-economic status, with disabilities, for different reasons. It can be as simple as that the clinic isn't accessible for a woman in a wheelchair. So they come and they say, no, you can't come anymore. So they're missing out from that reason. We also have women with other ethical or nationalities. that's also missing out the screening program, and also women with mental diseases. So, and we try to address it. We see it, but I think we're just scratching the surface here. Then that we, as an organization, could do more.
And we also have the fact that many with, having cancer treatments are also getting cognitive problems. And I'm looking at Yvan. Maybe this is also something, to connect. You should maybe add cancer also to your research with cardiovascular diseases and also the effect on the brain.
Because that's what we also see when we ask, because you have the prevention, the early detection, the treatment, and the late effects, and that's what we see, that many women, they experience heart problems, lung affected, fatigue. So it's very interconnected, all these diseases to cancer.
So if we continue with the cancer track, Eduardo, you are working with cancer organizations all over the world. All.Can International is some kind of an umbrella, so to say. We have been discussing before the interconnection, and cancer is one of the biggest killers together with cardiovascular diseases. But how do you see it from an international point of view? How can we connect these disorders together, diagnosis together, and to make a better effect also of medication for people?
It's a huge question, Penilla, and the first thing I would like to do is, can you hear me? The first thing I would like to do is to thank you very much for the privilege of being here with you and all of you here today. The discussions from this morning from the minister, it's not working.
No, it's not. Let's see if the technician is running soon. Yeah, you will have a microphone instead. Yeah.
We are consuming energy.
I can sing in the meantime.
This one is working.
Oh yeah, that was funny.
Now it's better.
Okay,
Sorry for that.
great.
I could, okay, this is not
Somebody
so I can
No.
show other entertainment skills. As they think the other microphone, it's not working.
How are we doing?
But they say that Italian technology is low technology, but we shall.
Well, we're not always the best in Sweden, so.
Is it better?
Yeah.
Yes.
Is it?
Yeah. You can just push
I can
it.
sing anyway.
Oh, no.
Later,
Oh,
later.
Good.
So, inspiring talks from the minister to everyone in this panel a few minutes ago, and everyone going in the same direction, I had the impression. So, allow me to give some sort of public policy comments. That's my job, after all. So, I'm not going into the contents, the technical, scientific contents, but I'm going towards the context. And the context which goes in the direction that you have asked, first and foremost, in my opinion, has to be anchored to the famous or not so famous political declaration of the United Nations on non-communicable diseases, etc., etc., etc. Well, this started in 2011. I was there at that time and I was one of the contributors. So I remember the discussions of bringing together multiple voices from the scientific community, from the advocacy community. Everyone wanted to be first in line, all right? Cancer. Cancer is the greatest health challenge that humanity has ever faced. Quote, now how many people here would disagree, I don't know, but that was the type of debate that was started in front of the high-level sessions of the United Nations in 2011. Now, fast forward to 2025, if it was not for the United States, however, the 2026 declaration on NCDs was formally adopted, and it includes not only the 5 traditional NCDs, it includes also neurological disorders, mental health, etc., etc. So there has been, first of all, a greater recognition of the need to the need for an integrated approach from a public health perspective, but there is also a recognition of the social dimension of these diseases, okay? So that's another important piece that brings me to ask the question, which was part of the discussion already in the morning. If we want to create synergies, if we want to connect the dots, where can we start from? Where should we start from? There are some answers to these questions, I think, already in the UN Declaration on NCDs, because there is a reference to prevention, and we all discussed prevention as a priority. I fear that the return on the political return and the commercial return on investments in prevention are not so high, and therefore this is going to be one of those stories that we have to keep pushing and keep raising in front of policymakers. There is another dimension that connects with primary care and the investments in primary care workforce. I suppose everyone would agree on the fact that, you know, the world turns around money, and there are not enough resources, economic, financial resources at primary care level. There are millions of generalists, I don't know what's the translation, the good translation in English, physicians who are overwhelmed, who are burned out, etc., and their capacity to deliver everything that we discuss at the UN level, let alone at the European Union, etc. Come on, hello, we're drowning, we're suffocating. That's where the answers have to be provided. There are other horizontal topics which were also touched upon and which I would argue are perfectly compatible in the discourse, in the narrative that we use in cancer policy, and have got to do, one, with literacy, health literacy. You can call it cancer literacy or something else, but it's health literacy which helps everyone understanding what are the risks and the opportunities, what are the behaviors that have to be taken. And secondly, the other horizontal thing on which I would argue we collectively have to promote and advocate for is data surveillance and data sharing. And that's precisely the point that you were making a minute ago. Data sharing is fundamental to define evidence-based policies. And evidence-based policies include at the heart what relates and what matters to people, what matters to patients, but not only patients, all people who are part of a given community, interested community. So it's multifaceted, it's very complex, but there are, again, cross-cutting topics that all of us can work on. Can I conclude on one part? No. I talk too much, and I sing.
You must sing later on tonight.
Later on.
Thank you so much, Eduardo. And if we just like to have a short round also before we end for the next session. I think, Anders, when we talk about heart and lung diseases in Sweden, I mean, tomorrow we will discuss also the coming Swedish cardiovascular plan, as well as the European cardiovascular health plan. But I mean, the interconnections, I mean, co-morbidities, it's really a reality.
Yeah, of course it is.
Yes. So how do we encourage research in Sweden, as well as we heard Yvan and others here today? How can you?
I think this lecture today, I think that was great. Great also to show that the comorbidity and also between diseases and so on. And I think also by the processes and you're into the general and the physicians about GPs and so on. And I think that we also need to have the system and the value, and also the system that drives the healthcare needs to be aware of that, and also relate that the person, as Thomas into that you have not one disease, you have several, and the system needs to work together. And I think that the patient should not be the driver of that. It be driven together, I think. So.
And you're a big player in Sweden.
Yeah, together with the patient organization in itself, because the patient organization here in Sweden have 500,000 members.
Yeah.
So of course we are big organizations here in Sweden, and we also should be listened to in the coming election, I think.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
Marit, you also represent a big player in Sweden, and together with Thomas as well. I mean, when you work together, I mean, crossover the diagnostic areas, how can you reach out more to, I mean, for example, Thomas, Åsa, or Anders, or others, to really highlight the problem of I mean, the connected diseases and how it affects actually women with breast cancer?
Well, I think we are too fixated in our own
box.
Yes. Now we are launching a new cancer plan. It's a new cancer mission hub in Sweden. Now we are all there, and I think we work together with the other cancer organizations, but we not work together. I think we have never had a meeting talking about. I mean, and neither have we. And neither are we. So I mean.
How can you start?
This is a great opportunity, and I think we have much more to learn from to share experiences and work together on the big issues. Of course, a lot of questions are diagnose specific, but I mean, prevention is not, screening is not, side effects probably either not, rehabilitation, it's all we have in common. So I take it with me.
Yeah, good start maybe.
Yes.
Yeah. What do you say, Thomas?
I think we all often talk about that healthcare need to work together, but the patient organizations need it too. And what we can find many times that we have our special discussions about our special diseases, but we have many common questions where we have the same situation, where we have the same solutions, but we can work together. But the problem is that many of the patients' organizations have less of money, less of capacity. Many times it's companies invited us to work together, and then we work together. But we should work much more together, because we can help each other, we can take another arm, and we can work together. And if we do that, we can also show that if we are working together, maybe the healthcare can also understand that we should work together.
Yes.
Eduardo, is it the same for you, who
Yes.
represents an international cancer organization? I mean,
It definitely is. The thing on which we all can, but certainly it happens in the cancer community at large, we are focusing on is what is known as person-centered care pathways. Okay, that's a general expression which has been detailed in practice and with very concrete elements in the cancer care pathways. Now, when I look at the 7 steps that have been identified in the cancer care pathway, if you delete the word cancer, I think it's perfectly applicable to everybody. And having a person-centered care pathway that can be shared and on which everyone can integrate its own priorities and needs, I think it would really have an impact, and it could advance a shared advocacy plan.
thank you so much. And that's the final word for this session. And now we will give a hand for the panel and the presenters.